Mr. President, we're in receipt of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2214 and House Bill number 10121. This is the resetting of the first regular elections of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. May we recognize the chairperson of the Senate panel, Senator Francis Tol Tolentino, to give us the highlights of the bicameral committee.
Senator Francis Tolentino is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as a result of the bicameral conference on the resetting of the first regular elections in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao conducted last 21 September 2021, I have the honor to submit or to have this inserted into the records the copy of the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 2214 entitled An Act Resetting the First Regular Elections in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, Muslim Mindanao, amending for the purpose Section 13, Article 16 of Republic Act 11054, otherwise known as the Organic Law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao and for other purposes, and the certified, belatedly certified House Bill 10121, entitled An Act Resetting the First Regular Elections in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, amending for the purpose Section 13 of Article 16 of Republic Act 11054, otherwise known as the Organic Law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Also submitted, Mr. President, and I will have this inserted in the records, is a joint explanation on the disagreeing provisions of the two versions of the bill, which shall likewise serve as my sponsorship speech, Mr. President. The reconciled version of the bills recognize two important considerations. One, the constitutionally granted power of the President to appoint. And two, the right of our brothers and sisters in the Bangsamoro region to have competent and reliable leaders. In 2011, Republic Act 10153 was passed into law, mandating the synchronization of the elections in the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao with the national and local elections. One of the provisions of the said law granted the President the authority to appoint officers in charge for the office of the regional governor, regional vice governor, and members of the regional legislative assembly. Section 2 of RA 10153 provides, and I quote, appointment of the office of officers in charge. The President shall appoint officers in charge for the office of the regional governor, regional vice governor, and members of the regional legislative assembly who shall perform the functions pertaining to said offices until the officials duly elected in the May 2013 election shall have qualified and assume office. Thereafter, Mr. President, several cases emanating from the Supreme Court affirmed, confirmed, validated the aforesaid provision. Hence, Mr. President, in reconciling the disagreeing provisions of the Senate Bill 2214 and House Bill 10121, the conferees of the Bicameral Committee ensured the passage of legislative measure will not unduly curtail the constitutional power of the President to appoint. The non-curtailment of the President's appointing power is just one of the two most important considerations in coming up with the final draft of the reconciled measure. As emphasized during the joint conference meeting held last week, the reconciled version will give the President the authority to appoint competent leaders who will continue, lead, and finish the transition period in the BARMM. The necessity for appointing competent and accountable leaders cannot be delayed, especially during these pandemic times. During the Senate deliberations on Senate Bill 2214, we also uncovered delays in the fulfillment of some of the mandates under the Bangsamoro Organic Act. Hence, the reconciled provision will expedite the rollout of development and recovery efforts in the region through the effective leadership of competent, accountable, and reliable officials in the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. Our brothers and sisters in the BARMM region should not wait until June 2022 to have their leaders they truly deserve. With this regard, Mr. President, I hereby move for the adoption of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 2214 and House Bill 10121 on the resetting of the first regular elections in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. I so move, Mr. President.
What does the Senator Frank Drilon is recognized. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman sponsor of the BICAM report yield the floor to a couple of clarificatory
Willingly, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Firstly, we note that the BICAM version, bicameral cooperative version, is basically the same as that of the House version and the Senate and the Senate committee version that was presented in plenary to the in the Senate. Is that a correct understanding, sir?
With all due respect, with all politeness, Mr. President, that's partially correct, Mr. President. But we note that there are differences, likewise, Mr. President, and the Senate contingent was not intransigent. The same is true, can be said of the House contingent. A compromise measure evolved and was unanimously adopted, Mr. President. So it's not correct to say that we just adopted the House version. Though the House version, Mr. President, was certified by Malacanang, Mr. President. If the good minority leader will allow me later on to explicate the differences, I will do so, Mr. President.
Well, the fact that the President certified the House version is of no moment to this representation. We are an independent body. We act on the basis of the collective judgment of 24 senators, and that's why I am raising these issues. The gentleman said that there are differences, but just to avoid a very lengthy debate, I take note of the sponsor's statement that the constitutionally granted power of the president to appoint will not be curtailed by this bill or by this law. I repeat, I note I note the statement of the good gentleman that the bicameral conference committee report does not impair the constitutionally granted power of the president to appoint. Would you confirm that?
Yes, Mr. President.
Now, during the debates on the committee report in the Senate, let me quote the good sponsor when he said, quote, Mr. President, even without the enactment of this law, the president is authorized to appoint, comma, to remove the incumbent BTA members, comma, even without an enabling law. And when we find it in the Supreme Court, we find it in several Supreme Court decisions, and I cite the Velicaria Garafil versus Office of the President, GR number 203372, June 16, 2015, and even the Constitution itself, Article 7, Section 16, and I quote, the President shall appoint all other officers of the government whose appointments are not provided by law, and those whom as he may be authorized by law. So, even without this mandatory law, the president can cut short the appointment, the tenure of the BTA members, can change, overhaul the parliament, even without this law. Would the gentleman reconfirm the validity of this position taken by the good chairman as being applicable to the final version of the bicameral conference committee report, consistent with his statement that the power of the president, the constitutionally granted power of the president to appoint, will not be curtailed by this law?
Mr. President, I don't have here the copy of the transcripts, but can the good minority leader repeat the last phrase? Would that conflict? I probably missed that last sentence, Mr. President.
The last sentence reads, so even without this amendatory law, the president can cut short the appointment, the tenure of the BTA members, comma, can change, comma, overhaul the parliament, comma, even without this law, end of quote.
Yes, Mr. President, I confirm that in essence, the gist of that parliamentary engagement would encapsulate the statement made by the minority leader a while ago.
So that this statement and opinion expressed by the good sponsor can be considered as an interpretation of the provision appearing in the bicameral conference committee report.
Mr. President, as an extemporaneous statement made during the Senate plenary deliberations, and if the implication being suggested by the minority leader is I carry with me during the plenary debates all discussions pronounced as a sponsor in the bicameral conference committee meeting. That probably is the case. But there are rulings to the effect, Mr. President, and I cite Tolentino that perhaps, and I underscore perhaps, that when you go into a bicameral and the minority leader is more experienced in this, you are on a tabula rasa, Mr. President. You start on a clean slate, but you carry the sentiments of your contingent, Mr. President. So I don't know how to reconcile those statements, but my understanding of the Constitution is what the good minority leader just rephrased coming from my statements given during the plenary debates, Mr. President.
But just, okay, I'm sorry, I could not totally grasp what the gentleman said on the record, but just to repeat for emphasis, the right of the president to exercise his constitutionally granted power to appoint will not be curtailed by the way the bicameral conference committee report is drafted. Is that
Yes, Mr. President, because we limited ourselves, the committee had a reconciled version which just stated, and if I may be allowed to quote, provided, however, that the president may appoint the 80 new interim members of the BTA, and so on and so forth. It just mentioned the president. There never was an adjective that would refer to a future president, a past president. As the Constitution is clear, speaking of a president, it refers to the sitting president. And there is only one president. And if you measure this with the continuity of the office, we're referring, Mr. President, to the incumbent office holder, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, I regret that I really could not understand what the gentleman is saying. I'm just trying to make it clear. But anyway, to make to clarify once and for all what exactly does this mean, I'll give a specific example, and I would like to get the reaction of the good sponsor. The incumbent president, meaning President Duterte, after the passage of this law, appoints a new member of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority on December 1 of this year, replacing an incumbent member of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. Would the gentleman agree with the view that the appointment made by President Duterte on December 1 under this law is valid?
Yes, Mr. President.
All right. And it is valid because the replaced incumbent PTA member does not enjoy security of tenure. Would the gentleman agree with that?
Yes, Mr. President, and the existing BOL provides for the non-security of tenure.
Okay, fine. Come July 1, 2020, can the new president remove all the members of the BTA?
Mr. President, I'll be inclined to opine that the newly elected president can likewise make an appointment, Mr. President, because that power is lodged with him under Article 7, Section 15 of our Constitution, Mr. President.
That's
So
right.
it confirms my earlier statement that we speak of the president.
Okay, so that I agree, so that I'm glad to hear that position, so that the new Bangsamoro Transition Authority member that the incumbent president may have appointed or would have appointed on December 1, 2021 can be replaced by the new president on July 1, effective July 1, 2022.
Subject, of course, Mr. President, to the requirements of the Bangsamoro Organic Law that 41% would be coming from the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, together with the Moro National Liberation Front, and the other sectors to be represented, Mr. President.
Assuming that that is complied with, the replacement that the new president would make would be a valid appointment.
Can we have that again, Mr. President?
Assuming that all those other conditions mentioned by the good sponsor, that the proportion is maintained, etc., assuming that the appointment is consistent with those conditions, the new appointment on, let's say, on July 1, 2022, by the new president can replace the one appointed by the incumbent president on December 1, 2001, in my example.
Mr. President, to mirror image the discussions during that bicameral conference committee, the reason why the incumbent president is allowed now is because there is a sense of indirection insofar as the members of that region are concerned, that some are not performers, some are not performing. That's why there was this delay that caused the non-passage of the Bangsamoro Electoral Code, with due respect to them, and probably the delayed transition, the delayed decommissioning process, etc., etc. So there is, as part of the records, the reason for this is there should be cause, Mr. President. So right now, the appointing authority, while hinged on a constitutional provision, would necessitate a cause. That probably would be reflective or needed, likewise, for a future president to appoint. There should be a valid cause for removal, Mr. President. That's what came from the bicameral conference committee meeting, Mr. President.
Mr. President, with all due respect, that clause with cause is not found in the present provision.
Mr. President, I mentioned that was what was reflected during the conference committee meeting. So I'm just reiterating what came from the members of the House, the sentiments of our other colleagues, and what came from the members of the House probably would have more local validity, since they came from the areas of Maguindanao, Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, etc., etc., Mr. President. So I'm just reiterating what transpired.
Can I have a clear statement on the record that, okay, in the example I gave, the incumbent president appoints a BTA member effective December 1, 2021, assuming that the law is valid at that point. That appointee can be changed effective July 1, 2022 by the new president, given the fact that repeatedly the gentleman said this provision will not curtail the constitutionally granted power to appoint of the president. That phrase "with cause" is not found in the bicameral conference committee report. So that is why I am trying to locate exactly the description of the power of the president. Can we just have one answer? Example, can the newly elected president on July 1, 2022 replace the BTA member appointed on December 1, 2021 on the, because according to all the previous statements of the good gentleman, there is nothing here that curtails the power of the president. And moreover, just a while ago, the good gentleman said that the replacement on December 1, 2021, in the example I gave, is valid because the replaced incumbent member did not enjoy security of tenure. So that is why the question, the logical follow-up is that the next president can appoint, can replace this BTA member appointed on December 1, 2021.
Yes, Mr. President, I understand that this deliberation will form part of the records. And in terms of statutory construction, whoever will raise this case before the High Tribunal will allow us to be quoted, etc., etc. But, Mr. President, I agree that the President will have the authority to appoint. And, Mr. President, there is one word that we should be that should be noted in the reconciled version, and it is the word "may," Mr. President. Provided, however, that the President may appoint 80 new interim members. In the House version, the President shall appoint 80 new members. In the Senate version, the President shall appoint 80 new members. The reason why we adopted and we agreed upon the word "may" is it involves presidential discretion, Mr. President. This is not mandatory because, as I mentioned a while ago, there may be non-performers who may be replaced tomorrow or next week, and the President will have the legal cover even if there is a constitutional provision granting him the authority. He now has the discretionary power to remove some who are considered non-performers. And, Mr. President, going to the question of the minority leader, in the future, the President may also appoint, Mr. President. So this is part of the recognition by the Congress of that broad discretionary executive powers, Mr. President, granted to the Chief Executive, that he may appoint. He may appoint tomorrow, he may appoint next week, next month, but subject again to certain limitations like Section 16. This has something to do with the midnight appointments clause provision of the Constitution. He may not appoint within 2 months prior to the end of his term. So these are all interrelated, Mr. President. But to answer your question, I answered the same in the affirmative.
You answered the same in the affirmative, so that the BTA member appointed by President Duterte under this law on December 1, 2021 can be replaced by the next president effective July 1, 2022 if as the next president would have that discretionary power that he can exercise in replacing any and all members of the BTA, assuming that he complies with all the other conditions, as this is in recognition of the fact that this law does not curtail the constitutionally granted power to appoint. If the gentleman can say, can answer yes or no, because this is a very, I thought, I'm trying to make myself as clear as possible so that we can reflect the intention in the law of the bill of the Senate of Congress. I mean, we can end this debate and proceed to the voting on the BICAM report.
Yes, Mr. President, I repeated the word.
All I'm asking from the Senate, from the sponsor is my
Yes.
statement correct?
Your statement, Mr. President, was answered in the affirmative. But
Okay.
one last clarificatory phrase, Mr. President. What we extended here, as called from the plenary deliberations, was the term of the BTA, the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. We extended that vehicle's right to exist. But the occupants of the vehicle, they can be subjected to the presidential discretionary authority to be reappointed, replaced, or appointed again, Mr. President. So my answer is yes.
You know,
I think I'm very clear with that proposition, Mr. President.
yes, I may not be as learned as the good gentleman, but all I'm trying to do is to try to make sure that the intention of the Congress in enacting this bill is as we have interpreted, and that the interpretation is that the power of the president to appoint a constitutionally granted and recognized power will not be curtailed by the way this bill is crafted. And since that is accepted after so much debate, I will leave it at that, Mr. President.
All right.
The gentleman is again going to qualify the answer with all kinds of qualifications.
No, Mr.
all right.
President, Mr. President, I agree that our perspectives might be different, but our goals are shared, Mr. President. We want peace, progress, and development in the Bangsamoro region.
Sabi na lang na oo, yung bagong presidente ay pwedeng mag-appoint ng bagong PTA pagdating ng panahon. Yun lang naman ang hinihingi ko eh.
Yes, I answered that repeatedly in the affirmative, Mr. President.
Except you've made so many qualifications. You
Okay.
just made so many. Anyway,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, the Minority Leader. Before I recognize Senator Marcos, just for my clarification, no, and I keep on hearing the date December 31, 2021.
No,
Why?
no.
Aren't we postponing the elections of May 2022?
It never came from me, Mr. President.
Ah.
That was just probably an example.
All right, so we're postponing the elections of May 2022 in the BARMM, right?
Yes, Mr. President.
All right, so if ever there is any what do you call this, extension by the incumbent members, it will be from May to June 30. Correct?
Mr. President, the extension envisioned here is
No, not an extension. We're giving the power to the president to appoint
yes, Mr. President.
new
But-
members for after May 9, 2022. No, after right. May 9, 2022, because they're still officers from
Yes,
that
Mr.
time.
President. I answered that in the affirmative.
Correct, no?
But the
So,
incumbent president can do his replacement now for the non-performers, Mr. President.
because of the previous law,
Yes, the existing
not because of what we are passing.
yes, Mr. President.
Ano? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I wanted that clarified. Senator Dillon, yes, the Minority Leader.
Again, I hear that phrase, non-performing. Those who are not performing, they can be replaced. Those who are performing, can they be replaced or not?
I would surmise, Mr. President, that no presidential discretion would go against the tide of logic and reason, because most of these are political now, Mr. President. The majority leader can confirm that this came from extensive discussion.
Yes, Mr. President, just on that point, I wish to spread into the record to inform the good sponsor that this representation invested so much money, so much time and effort in crafting this law as could be confirmed by the majority leader. But again, very simple question. The
Pero
president
sinasabi niya,
exercises full discretion to appoint and dismiss members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority until 2025, whether the incumbent president or the president to be elected in May of 2022, regardless of whether there is cause or not.
As the principal author of the existing law, I cannot rebut, Mr. President. So I agree, but that
We just have an answer, yes or no.
conditionally hinged on existing constitutional provisions, Mr. President.
So what is the existing constitutional
Existing constitutional provisions that the President has the authority. Existing constitutional provisions on the right of persons to have due process of law. Existing constitutional provisions on the prohibition on the President to appoint within 2 months before the end of his term, Mr. President.
okay, I will carry the question of the minority leader to its logical conclusion. Ito, now, if we do not pass a law, if we do not suspend the elections, can the president appoint or replace the present members?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, all right. So whether they are performing or not, they can be replaced by the president because of the previous law. Tama ba?
Correct, Mr.
O
President.
yun.
Yeah. So
I
that
think that was the question of the minority leader. Oh.
pursuing that point, very good point of the Senate President, on July 1, 2022, under the president, that new president can appoint, can dismiss.
Correct.
Is that correct,
Yes.
Mr. Sponsor?
Yes, I answered that, Mr. President.
Yes.
But you keep on answering and having so many qualifications. That's why we keep on going back. If you just make a plain and simple answer, which an ordinary intelligent, my ordinary intelligence will understand, maybe we will have less of a debate. But anyway, that's already established of record.
Okay, yeah, I think it's established. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Senator Marcos is recognized, and I mean Marcos.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. President. And if the minority leader is done, may I simply manifest and clarify that I share Senator Drilon's anxiety regarding the tenure or term of office of the appointees to the BTA. A close reading of Section 2 of the measure provides that the President may appoint the 18 new interim members of the BTA who shall serve up to June 30, 2025, or until their successors are elected or qualified, indicating a fixed tenure or term of office. It is also in compliance with the general purpose of the BARMM law to avoid undue interference in the autonomy that has been endowed, and also to provide political stability. On another point, the proviso using may appoint instead of shall appoint, does it mean that it's not mandatory for the president to issue a new appointment for new interim members of the BTA? If no new appointment is issued by the president, does it mean that the existing members of the BTA are deemed reappointed to serve until June 30, 2025? May appoint creates the confusion and uncertainty that we seek to avoid, especially in the bar, where political stability and the building of trust and confidence in its leaders is still on a very long road. The appointment or reappointment of new members should be pursued immediately after the passage of this act so they can proceed with their work without worry of reappointment or change at a later date. The proviso as it reads may be interpreted that until and unless the president makes the appointments or reappointments, which gives them a term till 2025, this is my position, there is always the possibility that the president may exercise the power to appoint at some uncertain, unknown later date up to the end of his term. We should avoid any notion of unreasonable interference in BARMM autonomy by mandating the issuance of new appointments or reappointments immediately. I therefore move that the may, appearing before the word appoint in section 2, line 4, should be changed to shall, so that we are provided a specific date within which the president will exercise.
Ratified na.
Thank you, Mr. President.
It's a BICAM report. We cannot amend it anymore.
Yes, I'm merely making a manifestation. I'm aware that amendments can no longer be made. I'm just manifesting my objection to the use of the word may rather than shall, and expressing my opinion that in fact appointees have a fixed term. Either the date indicated, which is June 30, 2025, or as line 4 state, upon election. Thank you.
I must have misheard you because I thought you said move to.
Yes.
I moved to replace, something like that, but I must have misheard you. Anyway, so Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I did enjoy, thank you very much, Mr. President. I did enjoy the exchange between Senator Drilon and our distinguished chairperson, the Sultan of Maguindanao, Sultan Stol Tolentino. And I concur. If the appointing authority is the president, Mr. President, he may appoint now, but the new president may also replace the members of the BTA. So, because it's not a fixed term, we did not put a fixed term, Mr. President, on the members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. So, with that, Mr. President, I move that we adopt and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2214 and House Bill number 10121, and ask that, and let the text of the, oh, Senator Gordon's facing it. May we recognize Senator Gordon, Mr. President?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. President. I
Senator Gordon, go ahead.
follow the discussion. Am I to now say that the president can appoint now, but the new president-elect can change the composition when he takes over in July 2022? Are we not putting the country into a very uncomfortable position or a very dangerous position where you're going to have people appointed and then all of a sudden they're going to be disappointed by the new president-elect? And that means that there will be tensions once again. Let us tarry a little before we vote on this because, while it is true that the president, it's we have to be careful. There's been a lot of conflict in that area. And when we make a decision, correct me if I'm wrong, am I mistaking it? Or would that be a possible scenario? Somebody please enlighten me.
Yes, Mr. President, if I may have a quick reply, there are conditionalities that would impinge on any appointment, and that is enshrined in the Bangsamoro Organic Law. 41% should come from the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and the rest would be coming from the other sectors, the IPs, the Christian settlers, etc., etc. So the 41%, the majority,
No,
is 41 seats for the BTA would remain as part of the provision and would be respected, should be respected by whomsoever would be the president,
No.
Mr. President.
But Your Honor, the nature of the Filipino character, whether Muslim or Christian, once he gets an appointment and he is removed, there is a matter of face right away. The first thing that comes in is face. Tinatanggal sila. And then all of a sudden, some people can make that into another cause, cause for misunderstanding and even war. I just want to make sure that we are doing the right thing by our country. Because if that happens, then all our efforts here will be for naught. Uh, I don't know how this happened. How can this happen?
Mr. President, yes, with
yes,
the permission of my ninong, Senator Gordon.
Yes,
Yeah.
Senator Zubiri.
Just for to clear the air, the Bangsamoro Organic Law, which Senator Gordon was one of the co-sponsors and co-authors and helped me pass in the last 17th Congress, we have provision there which really identifies the members of the BTA. Written in stone na po yan. That cannot be amended by this extension bill. And under that law, Mr. President, out of the 80 members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, 41 will be chosen by the MILF. So regardless of who president sits, whether it's this existing president or the next president, they will have to respect the list of the 41 members of the MILF, which complies with our peace process. So wala po tayong gulo with the MILF. We will not violate any portions of the peace agreement that we've signed with them, and under the, of course, the sections of the law will be complied. The other 39 will be subdivided nga equally to particular areas, as well as kasama dapat dyan, may percentage, may number din nakalagay, hindi ko lang, I don't memorize at this point in time, the numbers for the IPs, indigenous peoples, the settlers, the Christian settlers, yes, and others, no, others. So pati women and youth kasama sila doon, Mr. President. So if the good gentleman is worried about the compliance to the peace agreement, if we follow whoever president who will appoint will have to follow the law, the Bangsamoro Organic Law, which clearly defines the allocation to the MILF, which complies with the peace agreement, Mr. President. So hindi po worried yung MILF kasi under the law that will be followed, they will be still represented as a majority members of the BTA, Mr. President.
just one question, Mr. President. That is if the MILF stands by their, the word of the MILF is law insofar as the appointments are concerned. Supposing their individual ambitions have been that have been spurned by this. In other words, what I'm asking is, sinasabi nyo, MILF, so long as the MILF composition is okay. But supposing the president changes that composition and appoints still another set of MILF, would there be trouble with that?
The list will come from them, Mr. President. I believe, Mr. President, the list will come from the MILF and the MNLF. I'm sorry, I apologize, I did not include the MNLF. The list will be coming from the organization. So if Chairman Murad, who is the head of the MILF, will give the list, our chief minister, ayun po ang i-designate ng ating presidente, whether it is now or later.
Distinguished Majority Floor Leader, I just want to be sure na we dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Now, if the president decides to change certain personalities in that recommendation by the MILF or the MNLF, would there be some problem? Would there be a crimp? Would there be a hiccup? Would there be a major pneumonia that might occur, which will create a problem for everybody? If you can assure, and I don't know whether you can assure that, because when push comes to shove at the proper time, baka mamaya may aangal, hindi kami yan, ganun mangyayari dyan. I just want to be assured that that's not going to happen. Otherwise, I'll have to abstain in this vote, Mr. President, because I don't want to be part of a situation where there are cracks in the very vision that you, Your Honor, the Majority Floor Leader, sponsored when we both sponsored this, and that it will not be thwarted by individualities that can occur when a departing president appoints some people and the incoming president does not agree with those composition, albeit they will still be part of the MILF or the MNLF. Basta wala lang magulo, that will be fine with me, Mr. President.
Yes, I would believe so, Mr. President. I'm always looking at the optimistic side of things. And the law is very clear, the BOL, on the composition of the BTA. We cannot veer away from that, Mr. President, or else it's a violation of the law. because the extension is it's a very simple extension. So I can assure my good colleague that we would be one if they go and violate the BOL in terms of the appointments of these individuals by, let's say, the new president or the existing president. I will be one with him that will point out to the leadership that it's a violation of the Bangsamoro Organic Law. So I don't think they would violate the law, Mr.
One
President.
final question then, sir. Is the MI11, the MI11 are aware of this and that this possibility can happen and they're still on board, Mr. President?
Yes, I will ask the good gentleman because he's always in contact, the sponsor, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, they are involved, Mr. President.
They're aware
Yes.
of all the ramifications that can happen.
Yes, Mr. President, they are aware.
All right. I still am very concerned about it, but anyway, I almost want to abstain from the vote, but if that's going to delay the peace in the area, I will change my vote, Mr. President.
There is a sore thumb sticking out, gentlemen, Your Honors, ladies. The proviso on Section 2, we have to clarify in the BICAM report. You know, the proviso says, provided, however, that the President may appoint the 80 new interim members of the BTA who shall serve up to June 30, 2025, or until their successors shall have been elected and qualified. This is the cup half full or half empty, because it could mean also that after June 30, 2025, wala pang nai-elect, holdover pa rin sila. Ang sinasabi nito. And then the other side of the cup is elected and qualified. Walang sinasabing until successors have been elected and qualified. Walang sinasabi na pag pinalitan ng presidente. Now, if the president approves or adopts or appoints two or a certain number of appointees after the new president, July 1, 2022, parang yung hinahanap ni minority leader, wala dito.
Mr. President, the phrase "until their successors have been elected" came from the Senate version. The Senate version speaks of "until the successors shall have been elected." The House version, on the other hand, speaks of "where duly elected officials shall have qualified and assumed office." So the implication here is that it refers to an election conducted in 2025 involving the first regular elections of the Bangsamoro, Mr. President.
Mr. President?
Yes, Senator Marcos.
Yes, your understanding, Mr. President, unfortunately is the same as mine, and it is quite unequivocal that the term of the new appointees shall be until 2025 or the election. There are no grounds for removal and no reference to non-performance, cause, or other such reasons for a change in these appointees by a future administration. Thank you.
So,
Yes.
minority leader.
Well, Mr. President, in view of these reservations made by no less than the Senate President and supported also by Senator Marcos, will the chamber consider returning the bicameral conference committee report to the bicameral conference committee for clarification?
Mr. President, we have 72 hours before the filing of the certificate of candidacy. And our constitutional goal here, Mr. President, is to provide certainty amidst these confusing times. That area, just like ours, is facing great challenges: pandemic, the peace process, non-release of funds in certain aspects. So, Mr. President, I think it is it would be difficult for us to, as the House already ratified the bicameral conference committee report, for us to provide confusion once again. Perhaps, Mr. President, by approving this, we provide clarity. Okay, you go extended. Okay, you go till May 2025. And the clarified roles _S of the current president and the putative president are recognized, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, I go for clarity, certainty, and amidst this looming crisis, if we return this to another conference committee, because it's now just 72 hours before they file their certificates of candidacy. Mr. President, we're bound by time. We're bound by the history of the place. We're bound by our commitment to uphold peace, Mr. President.
Yes.
I move that we adopt and ratify so that we can take up the GIL resolution. Para masaya naman.
Yeah.
Praise God naman tayo after this.
Yes, you know, this is not the first time that this happened. A few weeks back, we were confronted by the same situation where the bicameral committee report reflected the exact opposite of what the Senate version was all about. And this is the arming of the firemen under the Bureau of Fire Protection Modernization Bill. And it had to go back and forth because what was approved in the bicameral conference committee and reported to the Senate was exactly a version which the Senate rejected. And in complete disregard of that rejection by the Senate of the initial of the rule that armed forces that the firemen should not be armed, the BICAM report came back with a provision that sought to arm every fireman. So that was why there was a voting, and it was returned to the BICAM report, even if the House had already ratified the BICAM report. I guess what this tells us is the Senate President has been here longer than we. In all of these things, and we have gone through many laws of this nature, we always try to consult. We consult with everyone, especially to those who are deeply involved in the crafting of the law. Kasi kukunti lang tayo rito eh. Ha? Pag papalitan mo yung na-approve ng Senado, the better process, without giving up your prerogative as a majority, is to consult everybody so that you'll not have problems when the BICAM report is presented. Well, I will charge that to experience for Senator the good sponsor, but let me put on the record, and as will be confirmed by the Senate President, in our long years here in the Senate, we always try to go by consensus. If we cannot go by consensus, then we vote. But we do not vote as a first process, a first means of resolving everything. Eh kung nagkonsultahan lang ba, hindi aabot sa ganitong diskusyon. Yun po, but nevertheless, I'm glad that the good sponsor has recently
72 hours.
accepted the proposition that indeed the president can appoint members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority in recognition of the constitutional power of the president to appoint, which I would repeat, will not be curtailed by this bill. So with that spread into the record, I'm ready to vote, Mr. President. Kaysa ibalik na naman natin sa BICAM, baka po yung ating majority leader magbibigti na kung hindi natin maipasa ito.
Oo nga po. And I stand with the minority floor leader, Mr. President. I absolutely agree with him. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been around for a long time, right, helping write laws. the appointing authority is indeed in the power of the president. Is in the authorities with the president. So definitely, if the new president, and we've seen it before with new administrations, when they sit down, it happened with the NCMF, the National Commission for Muslim Filipinos, that was supposed to have a fixed term, but the new president had removed the NCMF officials. There was a court, they took it to court, but the court has decided that the authority, appointing authority, is the president. And it's been done before. I know that because we created the National Commission for Muslim Filipinos, the NCMF. So when they took out the one that was appointed by former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, was appointed 6 months before the end of her term. When the new president, which is President Benigno Aquino, came into power, they replaced the NCMF and other members that were appointed 1 year into their term. So it's possible the appointing authority, Mr. President, is with the president. So that is, for me, I agree with the minority floor leader on that point. So may we act on it, Mr. President?
Yes. So the motion of the majority leader is to adopt the bicameral conference committee report.
So, Mr. President.
Any objection? Senator Recto is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just vote no to the committee report. Just to be consistent, I voted also against this measure. I'm against postponing elections. Every time we had a vote on postponing elections, I was always against it. So the same will apply in this measure. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Ping Lacson is recognized.
Same with this representation, Mr. President. For consistency, I vote no.
All right. Any other negative vote? The minority leader is recognized.
Just a qualification. I vote yes, with the understanding that this provision is interpreted in the manner that would recognize the constitutionally granted power of the president to replace anybody anytime, to replace any member of the BTA anytime until a new set is elected in May of 2025. Thank you very much, Mr. President. My vote should be understood with that qualification. Thank you, sir.
Yes, the presiding officer manifests the same. I concur with what the minority leader said. The vote is yes, but making sure that the manifestation is that the new president may appoint. That is the interpretation of the framers of this law. Right? The minority, the Senator Amy Marcos is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President. I voted to abstain during the third reading of the bill seeking to postpone the elections for reasons I extensively argued during the period of deliberations. But the Senate by majority vote determined to postpone the scheduled elections, and that being the case, the only disagreeing provisions between the Senate and House versions is the former mandates that the president shall elect versus the latter, which mandates that upon approval of the act, the incumbent will appoint 80 members. The House version prevailed during the BICAM and is now presented to us to decide. I voted yes to adopt the bicameral conference, and I vote yes now to adopt the bicameral conference report because the issue is no longer the postponement of the elections, but rather the appointment of the members of the BTA. I vote yes because I believe that giving the authority to the next president of the Republic to appoint the new members of the BTA may simply create more uncertainty and confusion in the meantime. And since Congress has already voted to extend the BTA, we should not therefore delay the appointment or reappointment of the members of the BTA so that they can proceed with work without concern or worry. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. The manifestations are clear.
There's two more, Mr.
Senator
President.
Gordon and Senator
Senator
Pangilinan.
Gordon, sir.
Senator Gordon, go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I would like to vote yes, but I associate with the vote the reservations of the Senate President and the minority floor lead to be sure that we're clear on the matter. In case there's future understanding, I'd like to be able to defend myself on my vote. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan.
Yes, Mr. President. Likewise, this representation will vote yes to the ratification of the Bicameral Conference Committee report. But I do so with likewise, I associate myself with the manifestations of the Minority Leader, the Senate President, and Senator Gordon, that this does not in any way undermine the power of the President, the next President in particular, to make the necessary appointments at that time, Mr. President. Thank you, and all the best.
All right, thank you.
Mr. President, very short.
Senator Villanueva.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is just to spread into the records that I am voting yes. And I would like to also be associated with the sentiments of my distinguished colleagues, our Minority Floor Leader, our Senate President, Senator Gordon, Senator Pangilinan. And may I just be allowed, Mr. President, to just submit to the records, Mr. President, my explanation of vote. Thank you.
All right, any other manifestation? Hearing none. The Bicameral Conference Committee report with 2 negative votes is hereby adopted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much to my dear colleagues on this
Thank you, Mr. President.
landmark measure. Congratulations to the chairperson.